Good morning, Tampa Bay. What is going on? Hump Day edition, Channelside in the morning, live on the Channelside Sports Network. You know me, I am Danny. A lot went down yesterday. A lot went down in the NFL yesterday. We'll preface it by saying that, right? We saw a lot of what is the word that we'll use? Interesting. I think interesting is the best way to describe that. Punishments for the Miami Dolphins based upon their what they did tampering wise with Tom Brady, not only in Tampa, but come to find out in New England as well. Which, I mean, come on, man, what are you doing? You can't be doing that. We're also going to talk about where the Bucs line up in their fantasy rankings. We're also going to talk about what the Rays did not do yesterday, which includes win and make a trade, unfortunately. I guess they did make a trade, but it's really kind of a redundant trade. And we're going to look at the best lineup that the Orlando Magic can field heading into the season. And where exactly do we feel like that where do we feel that stacks up? Where do we feel that they rank? And if you are tuning in, I appreciate, just like I do every morning, but we appreciate you tuning in. We've got our very own Deandra Lou will be at Buccaneers training camp today, reporting live on the Channelside Sports Network Twitter. So if you are not following us and you happen to be tuning in live, make sure you follow us so you can follow those live tweets. And if you are tuned in on YouTube, we definitely appreciate it. Please hit that subscribe button. And if you're in the chat, hop in the chat. We talk to you during the show. I mean, everybody that comes in, they know that this is what we do. We have a hell of a lot of fun talking with you guys, mixing it up with ourselves, implementing thoughts, and and just having a good old time. Please hit that thumbs up button. Completely lost my train of thought. That's what happens when you don't sleep when you have a puppy. Hit the thumbs up button if you're on YouTube. Highly appreciated. That's going to bump us and boost us to the homepage. And we would just appreciate that because that gets more people involved. That gets more people talking with you, talking with us, and it just creates the fun, family-friendly atmosphere that we at Channelside Sports are striving to have. Nonetheless, we're going to actually start a little different than how we would normally start. Let's start in Central Florida with our Orlando Magic and the best possible starting lineup that the Orlando Magic could field, which would consist of Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and of course Wendell Carter Jr. It's a very solid starting lineup. Where it gets iffy after that is the bench depth. The Orlando Magic are a deep team, but they're a deep team in terms of unproven talent. They're deep with being optimistic, right? We are very deep on the bench in terms of, hey, if this guy pans out, or hey, if that guy pans out. This is where the Buccaneers. This is where the Orlando Magic are deep, is in that respect, right? But you just have to be realistic about where this team is going to be. I said it yesterday on the show, and I'll say it again today. Paolo Banchero is going to be an absolute problem for the league, and it's going to start this season. Starting in his rookie year, you're going to see a superstar in the making already. And for that record, Paolo Banchero could come into the league and he could set the league currently ablaze as it is. Dropped 53 points at the crossover pro-am. Not too shabby. To me, that's better than LeBron James dropping 40 and only winning by 2 in overtime, paired with DeMar DeRozan. 53 points from a rookie in the crossover. I'm cool with that. I'm a-okay with that. And I will talk that up and I will use that as a selling point for where I think Paulo Banchero is going to wind up in this league. I mean, he teamed with Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren was at one point was on our radar in Orlando. Chet Holmgren was one of the 3 talked about players along with Jabari Smith that the Orlando Magic could draft. They decided that they were going to go a different route and they were going to draft Paulo Banchero. And the small sample size that we saw from Banchero in the 2 games in the summer league, on top of what we saw at the crossover, I told you yesterday, I don't know if you went, but it's still up there. Go to the NBA YouTube page. You can look up highlights from Paulo Banchero at the crossover Pro-Am. And it was fantastic. It was absolutely great to watch and see that not only was he displaying leadership at the summer league, but he was displaying leadership at the crossover as well. So this tells me that if we look at both of these instances, we are now going to have a vocal leader who is a rookie on the Orlando Magic, which is exactly what you want because he's also a good player. You don't want a vocal leader that's going to suck, right? Like you want a vocal leader that can lead by example and show you the way and say, you know what? I'm going to put this team on my back. And by the way, we're going to be very good as well. How good will the Magic be? It depends on your definition of good, I guess. I think that's a subjective term, right? Is how good will the Magic be? The over-under on FanDuel is still 25.5 wins. I'm absolutely smashing the over on 25.5 wins. You guys know I am very critical of Jonathan Isaac. Very critical of Jonathan Isaac. However, even just Jonathan Isaac coming back, this team is going to increase from 22 wins to 25.5 wins on the over. Like, there's no way that doesn't even happen. You add another year of Markelle Fultz and Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner, add another year of the chemistry that these guys developed last year, and then you sprinkle in Paulo Banchero, and you're telling me that this team won't go over 25.5 wins? Come on, man. Like, that's ridiculous. That's blasphemous. Realistically, if we're going to be honest with ourselves. I don't know. And here's where it stops for me is I do not know if the Orlando Magic will make the playoffs. And that's kind of where the certainty stopped for me. Like I said, 25.5 wins, smash that over. Here's where it's a little different though. If you're on the FanDuel Sportsbook and you are trying to prop bet heading into the NBA season, the Orlando Magic are minus 1,800 to make the playoffs. I'm not a big gambling guy, right? And even with my uncertainty of the Magic making the playoffs, if you bet $10, you're going to win $180. I'm pretty that's not bad. Those aren't not bad numbers, right? That's kind of where you want to be. You want to be, if I win, I'm in the green, baby. Like, that's where I am. I'm spending this green. I'm making the green. That's where I want to be. But 43 wins is what it took the Atlanta Hawks to have last season to make the playoffs in the East. The East is no longer easy. I'm very certain that they make 25.5 wins on the over. 100% certain on that. Not guaranteed. I'm not a financial advisor. But making the playoffs, I like the bet of making the playoffs for the Magic simply because the return is fantastic. What I don't like is I don't know if they're going to win more than 43 games. That's going to essentially almost double their win output last year. And for me, that's kind of too rich of an assessment to go, okay, well, yeah, this team is definitely going to win more than 43 games. Now, of course, this is based off of last year, but we don't have anything to go off of, right? We can't say, oh yeah, well, this season I expect the 8th seed to win 30 games. Like we can't expect that. I think the bare minimum to make the playoffs, if you're trying to be realistic, I think the bare minimum would be a 500 record, would be the Magic winning 41, going 41-41 on the season. I think that's got to be your bare minimum when it comes to where can we be and where does this team, like, where do we see this team at, right? Like that is for me where the Magic are. Not confident that they make the playoff, but I'm still going to throw money down and say that they do make the playoffs. Just like I said, man, the return is just too damn good. $10, like, come on, man. You can't tell me that I'm going to risk $10 to make $180 on this Magic team that I know you have to, what's the point of going into a season saying, yeah, we're not going to make the playoffs, right? I get that. But they're not just saying we have the opportunity to make the playoffs. They're saying we have an opportunity to be very good. Now, to me, the way that I read that is we have an opportunity to be good, meaning that we should be better than making just the play-in game. We could be a 5th seed in the East. And hell, I would be A-okay with the Orlando Magic being the 5th seed in the East. Like that would be far exceeding, I think, any of our realistic expectations, right? Like I think that's where you look at it. I mean, if we look at the NBA playoffs from last year, you say, okay, like who? Obviously, we had the Hawks, but it's I don't know. It's difficult for me to look at it and really feel comfortable saying that the Orlando Magic can make the playoffs. But if you look, you probably assume that Miami is going to be one, or not necessarily one, but your top 3 in some form or fashion is going to be Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, and even throw in Philly into the mix for the top 3. I think your top 4 are probably solidified. And then that's where it kind of gets a little wishy-washy, right? You've got your Bulls. Who made it last year? The Bulls, the Hawks, the Nets, and the Raptors were your final team. I don't think I'm missing anybody. No. Those are your final 4 teams. Those are the teams that you realistically have to beat. Now the Nets, look, there's no reason that the Nets should be the 7th ranked team. Right? There's no reason why the Nets should be 7th when it comes to the playoff seeding. When you've got Kevin Durant and you've got Kyrie Irving on your team. Now, does a trade happen? Who knows? Maybe a trade happens, maybe a trade doesn't happen. There's too much uncertainty in Brooklyn. And we know that they're going to make the playoffs. They're too talented on the front end. They're too front loaded to not make the playoffs and to not make some noise when it comes to their seeding in the East. So then if you go, okay, let's add the Nets to that top 5, right? Some form or fashion. You've got the Nets, the Nets, the Heat, the Bucks, the Sixers, and the Celtics in your top 5 in the East. Then you, okay, well, that's 6, 7, and 8 are still remaining. And I realistically, if I'm looking at the 6, 7, and 8 teams outside of the Nets, if I'm looking at the Bulls could be good. Who knows? The Raptors, not really worried about the Raptors. Not worried about the Hawks too much because I think the Magic team is still young, so they can keep up with faster teams like the Hawks. They have shooting because Banchero can knock down the 3. Caleb Houston, we saw in Summer League, can knock down a 3. And he can also work himself out of a slump, and it seemed rather quickly as well. Markelle Fultz there's a lot of optimism heading into the season. So now that if we start deep diving, I think making the playoffs is actually pretty realistic for this team. You've really got 5 spots that are kind of sewed up, and then you've got 3 remaining slots. 6, 7, and 8. I think any one of those 3 are doable for the Magic heading into the season. I like if we're talking about prop bets, absolutely. But if we're also talking about realistic, the more you deep dive, the more it seems very realistic. Fantasy football is coming up. Channelside Sports, we are going to be hosting our own fantasy football league. It's coming up very soon. We're trying to work out the semantics of it, see if we can have an actual, like a physical location to host the draft. We're talking to a couple locations. I love fantasy football. I think everybody that watches football kind of loves fantasy football as well. It's just one of those things where, I mean, you can trash talk your friends, right? And you can back it up being a good GM. That's like, I don't know like how everybody looks at it, but I've been in my own league, I think for 8 straight seasons now. And it's fun because you play with the same core group of guys. You play with your friends, you play with acquaintances who are now your friends, because fantasy football, it just brings out the best in everybody. Of course, you know, we've got the Channelside Bets show coming up, likely around the beginning of the NFL season. Evan will be one of the co-hosts of that show, which will be pretty cool. We'll obviously cross-pollinate between Channelside in the morning, Channelside Bets, False Fit. Like, we've got so many cool things coming up. But where do the Buccaneers rank in terms of PPR rank? Do people even not? I think everybody plays PPR now. I think that PPR is really becoming the standard of scoring when it comes to fantasy football ratings, or just fantasy football in general. I think PPR is really what's kind of taking the cake, if you will. But where do the Buccaneers players line up? That's like, I think that's where everybody kind of really wants to know, is where the Buccaneers players line up. And if I told you that Leonard Fournette was the highest ranked Buccaneer heading into the fantasy football season, would you call me crazy? Are you prepared to call me crazy? Because here we go. Leonard Fournette is ranked number 16 overall in PPR. 16th overall in PPR ranks for Leonard Fournette. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the fact that he catches a lot of passes out of the backfield. I will tell you that Rashod White's projections, and we'll get back to fantasy in just a second, because this all kind of ties in together. Rashod White's projections for the year, not done by me, so there's no mathematical fallback on here, no analytics on here, but Rashod White's projections are 76 carries for 324 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not terrible. Not terrible. Where I think the big error is 24 receptions for 184 yards and 1 score. I think that is, to me, that's not where you want to be. I think you're way off in your projections if you're thinking that Rashod White is only going to have 24 receptions. Leonard Fournette, yesterday, Todd Bowles called Leonard Fournette an evolved 3-down back. He evolved from a 2-down back to a 3-down back. Now, I know a lot of people were commenting yesterday especially on our Facebook post. A lot of people were saying, yeah, but Leonard Fournette's always been a 3-down back. No, he hasn't. He's appeared to be a 3-down back a lot, but a lot of that had to do with Ronald Jones always being in the doghouse and them kind of forcing Leonard Fournette to be a 3-down back when he was not effective for all 3 downs. If we look at the percentage of snap counts that Leonard Fournette has been on the field during his time in Jacksonville, he had a 62%, 52%, and 89%. So yeah, his last season in Jacksonville, he was an 89% workload. That is a 3-down back. That is an absolute bell cow workload when it comes to a running back. If you look at his time in Tampa Bay, he's had a 43 and a 63% snap count share. 63% I know is more than 50%. But if you compare other 3 down backs, most 3 down backs are about 71 to 72% or higher. So he's on the cusp of being a 3 down back, but a lot of that realistically has to do with the fact that Ronald Jones was routinely in the doghouse for Bruce Arians, whether it was fumble issues, whether it was effort. I'm not sure exactly what the issue was with Ronald Jones and Bruce Arians, but there were a lot of issues that prevented Ronald Jones from seeing the field a lot. You know, we talked about 2 seasons ago, and they had 3 straight 100-yard games. He always had flashes. Will he pan out and be able to secure the ball in Kansas City? And that obviously that remains to be seen. I'm not sure. I don't know how much of the workload he'll cut into Clyde Edwards-Helaire out in Kansas City as well. Maybe he'll end up taking, 37% of the workload from CEH over there. Who knows? But I think that if you're looking at the Leonard Fournette snap counts, I think even with 63%, I still think that is probably the number that we're going to see in terms of where he's at with snap count. And that's going to be kind of slanting in favor of Rashod White and his effectiveness in passing. If you want to compare him in the passing game, I don't want to use Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh as a parallel, because I think that Le'Veon Bell's parallel would be Leonard Fournette. I would be more along the lines of saying Rashod White in his rookie season is going to be more of like a Theo Riddick in Detroit type of player, where when he's on the field, that the ball is going, that it's a passing down. And that he is going to run a halfback option, probably going to hit the middle of the field and be wide open in the box. You can kind of already anticipate that heading into the season. Now, he is a very, very good route runner, right? That's part of the thing that comes with Rashod White. Rashod White is a fantastic route runner. And he is a very good catcher in stride on deeper routes. Theo Riddick, obviously he was, because he ran wide receiver routes a lot at Notre Dame when he was there. And that's why I think that if I'm going to draw a parallel between the two players, I'm going to say that Rashod White is more along the lines of a Theo Riddick, and Leonard Fournette will have a Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh type role where he will be that lead back. But when Rashod White enters the field, we know exactly what we're going to expect from Rashod White. I think the handoffs, I think 76 carries for 324. I think that's respectable. But the 24 receptions for a $184, that's super low. So if you are trying to draft on value, especially if you're in a dynasty league, pick up Rashod White. If you're trying to draft on value, Rashod White might not even get drafted unless you've got a Buccaneers fan in your league. One thing that I've learned that I'm pretty good at is projecting players like deeper into the season. I think I've done my league for 8 straight seasons now. I've won 6 of 8 years, and I'm going against guys that win all of the other leagues that they're in as well. That it's very competitive. It is a money league, and we play for money and we play for autograph prizes as well. Because we do. It's weird, but we run the league on ESPN, and then we host. We sign up through NFL.com. So we can I think it's like $40 a buy-in, $45 a buy-in, 10-team league, $45 a buy-in, and then you get an autographed jersey as your prize. But NFL's fantasy is kind of lame, right? It's kind of whack. It's getting better. It's getting better than where it was, but it is kind of whack. So we run it through ESPN because everybody likes ESPN. The ESPN is the most easily accessible in terms of fantasy usage. Everybody's familiar with it. Everybody already had an ESPN account. and stick with what you know. Right? Some of the guys in this league are super lazy. I'm not sure where we're going to run the Channelside Sports Fantasy League. That's still to be determined between myself and our commissioner, Mr. Tony Pellegrino. Yeah, that guy. He's going to be your commissioner. You ever watch The League? Yeah. We're looking at you, Tony. So if you're looking, you could probably pick up Rashod White off of waivers. I might even tell you draft him in the late round just so you have him on your roster, because here's the thing we know about Leonard Fournette is Leonard Fournette's not going to be available for all 17 games. For whatever reason, we know that Leonard Fournette is likely to he runs too hard. Right? And we saw Vita Vea yesterday wrap Leonard Fournette up in the backfield at training camp and say you have to run for more than a yard. But we know that Leonard Fournette likes contact. And a lot of times when you like contact, you get these nagging injuries, whether it's, a stinger in the calf and the quad. You lower your shoulder, you get a little neck stinger, and then that kind of lingers for a game or two. Now you've got an explosive dynamic player in Rashod White. Because let's face it, Ronald Jones, we all loved Rojo, right? We loved Rojo when he was in Tampa, but he was kind of the same player as Leonard Fournette. He didn't really offer any versatility or anything different. It's not like Ronald Jones was a threat to catch passes out of the backfield. That's Leonard Fournette's job. But now you've got Rashod White, who is a better pass catcher out of the backfield. And now that kind of mixes things up. That gives you, a thunder and lightning aspect of the backfield, if you will. As we move through the rankings, so Leonard Fournette is actually ranked running back number 9. If you're going to go through that list, you got Jonathan. Yeah, let me. I have to. Sort this. But here's the issue that I have. You have Jonathan Taylor 1. And you've got Christian McCaffrey ranked at number 2. Everybody continues to give Christian McCaffrey all of this respect. And I'm fine with the level of respect you want to give a veteran player that has been good. But how many times are you willing to get burned by Christian McCaffrey? Because if I'm not mistaken, it's now 2 seasons in a row that if you drafted Christian McCaffrey, your ass has been chapped because you have been scorned and scorched so badly by Christian McCaffrey for taking him early in the draft. And the same thing kind of goes for Dalvin Cook. But here's what's crazy to me. Jonathan Taylor's 1, understandable. Christian McCaffrey's 2. You've got Austin Eckler jumping all the way up to 3. I think a lot of that has to do with his backup now being in Detroit. Justin Jackson is now in Detroit. Derrick Henry at 4, Najee Harris at 5, Dalvin Cook at 6. I think so. Here's Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey to me are very, very similar players. And I absolutely like Dalvin Cook being at 6 because that says, hey, there's obviously a lot of upside, but there is also a lot of question marks because we do not know exactly where Dalvin Cook is going to, how many games he's going to play. Dalvin Cook is good to miss games. Durability is always a question for him. Joe Mixon at 7, DeAndre Swift at 8. That's going to be a part of my hot take Friday. Leonard Fournette at 9, and then Alvin Kamara rounding out the top 10. Alvin Kamara has always been a fantasy stud for me, but he's going to miss some time, and we just don't know how much time he's going to miss, which obviously we're going to kind of talk a little bit later once Evan jumps on the show. When you're going through your quarterback rankings, the GOAT, the birthday boy, 45 years old for Tom Brady. Happy birthday to Tom Brady, by the way. Tom Brady's QB 8. And I'm not sure exactly how I feel about that. If we roll through, here's who's ahead of Tom Brady. At 1 is Josh Allen. I'm okay with Josh Allen at 1. At number 2, you got Patrick Mahomes. 3 is Herbert. Lamar Jackson at 4, and rounding out the top 5 is Kyler Murray. all of these guys are running quarterbacks. They're all mobile quarterbacks. So I get that because they are more apt to scoring with their legs. Most people are expecting Patrick Mahomes to kind of reel it in terms of how much he runs. But also Lamar Jackson missed some time last season as well. Kyler Murray, obviously, new contract. We'll see how he plays heading into the season. Dak Prescott at number 6. Jalen Hurts at 7. Then, of course, our boy Tom Brady at number 8, followed by Aaron Rodgers at 9, and Joe Burrow rounding out the top 10. One thing that I'm noticing is that the mobile quarterbacks are starting to kind of take over and kind of light it up. But for me, what I think is very, very interesting is Tom Brady's projection of 34 touchdowns. That's your difference maker right there. You're telling me that Tom Brady scored 374 fantasy points last year, and he's going to drop all the way down to 309. I don't believe that. I honestly, I don't believe that. I do think that he will have less in terms of the passes attempt. We talked about that. I posted those projections on the Channelside Sports Twitter. And actually it's on all of our social medias. But these quarterbacks, these mobile quarterbacks are what's doing it. That's where your guys are starting to ramp up a little bit. Is you're starting to see, okay, like all these mobile quarterbacks, because they're just dual scoring threats at this point. Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers aren't going to be running the ball. You do know that you're going to get very consistent play from both of them, but they're not going to be running the ball that much. You move on to wide receiver. Wide receiver, here's the problem for the Bucs with wide receivers. There's too many mouths to feed. Mike Evans is going to be our top-rated wide receiver, and he's going to come in at wide receiver number 12, followed by Chris Godwin at wide receiver 21, which I think is accurate. Like, that's the thing for me is, as much as I love Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and I think Russell Gage is going to be a steal in terms of fantasy draft, in terms of your ADP, there's just too many mouths to feed when it comes to the wide receivers with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm not comfortable drafting any wide receivers for the Bucs. We know Mike Evans is likely going to score a hell of a lot of touchdowns, right? I think ESPN's got Mike. Oh, he doesn't even have him listed at 8 touchdowns. I think 8 touchdowns for Mike Evans is light. 73 receptions for 1,015 yards is pretty damn spot on to where we projected him as well. And I think that's the respectable number. He's going to go over 1,000. I think the Bucs are going to do everything in their power to make sure that streak continues. But I still think that he's going to score more than 8 touchdowns. And that's for me, that's where you got to find that value. Cooper Kupp is at 1, Justin Jefferson 2, Jamar Chase 3, Devontae Adams at 4, Deebo Samuel rounding out the top 5, and then you've got Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, T. Higgins rounding out your top 10. What I find crazy is that Jalen Waddle is 13 and Tyreek Hill is number 8. They're expecting a very pass-happy offense in Miami, and they're expecting big things clearly out of Tua. Not in the top 10 in fantasy projections, but Chris Godwin, 81 receptions, 940 yards, 6. I don't know if I like that either. I think Chris Godwin goes over. I think he goes over $1,000. And he's probably going to be closer to. He's going to be on the higher end. Yeah. I don't like Chris Godwin's projection. I think that if you're drafting based on availability and based on value, Chris Godwin, I think, is where you want to look. I could be wrong, but I think Chris Godwin is where you want to look. When you're talking about, and here's where you're going to get your value right here. When we talk about the tight end position, because to find Cameron Brate, who is the projected number 1 tight end for our Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's all the way down at tight end number 34. Cameron Brate has solely been used for the vast majority of his career as a red zone threat. Which, by the way, that's what Julio Jones is projected to be as well, as a red zone threat. So if you're looking for value, stash Julio Jones. I think that you could start Cameron Brate and be okay if you're talking about fantasy league. I think you can realistically start Cameron Brate, especially when he's tight end 34. That means he's likely not even getting drafted. I think that's a value play. I think you draft Cameron Brate, stash him on your bench. Don't even draft him. Pick him up after the draft is over. Just go deep. Just go deep in the draft, man. But that's where we are. I'm excited for fantasy football. Stay tuned on the Channelside Sports Network, social media feeds. Doesn't matter which one. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place, getting engagement through the roof. We appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody that's tuning in already this morning as well. Jumping in the comments, whether it's on Twitter, we're not on Facebook anymore, or on YouTube. We're going to jump to what the Rays did or didn't do. The Rays didn't do really anything yesterday in terms of trade. They didn't do anything. All the Rays did yesterday was trade Brett Phillips to the Orioles for cash. What in the hell are you going to do with cash? Is cash going to help you in the playoff hunt? No. Is cash going to help you with consistency? No. What exactly is cash going to help you? What is cash going to help you with? It's not going to help you with anything. There is nothing that cash is going to help you with except lining your own pockets where you're not clearly putting it towards your roster anyway. So what is cash realistically going to do for you? It's not doing a damn thing for you. And I'll tell you another thing that really irritates me. And I know a lot of fans were saying the Juan Soto's not going to be the be all end all. And I get that. Juan Soto's not going to be the be all end all when it comes to the Rays succeeding and making the playoffs. But when you see what the Padres traded to obtain the biggest tradable asset in baseball currently, when you see what the Padres actually had to pay to land Juan Soto, it makes my skin crawl that the Rays we have the best farm system, the best prospects. And you're telling me all you really had to do was give a semi-decent first baseman and some prospects to land Juan Soto? That's all you had to do, and we couldn't get that together. We couldn't figure out some sort of formula, or we weren't even willing to offer prospects to land Juan Soto. Think about it. Let's dive forward, and then I'm going to tie this all back here. So the Rays lost again yesterday. The Rays lost to the Guardians again yesterday. I'm sorry, they lost to the Blue Jays yesterday. The Guardians series is over. They lost the series to the Guardians. It's not quite panic mode yet for the Rays, but it's getting pretty damn close in terms of where the Tampa Bay Rays are sitting in the playoff picture. They're now a game out of the second wild card spot behind the Mariners. But here's where it gets scary. Is you are there. Do you remember like last week when we were talking about it's okay if you fall out of the second wild card spot? You've got 2.5 games up on the Guardians, and then everybody else is like 5-6 games behind. That ain't the case anymore, guys. The Guardians are a game back. The Orioles are a 1.5 games back, and then you've got both the Sox, white and red, are 2 games behind. you are potentially talking about a Tampa Bay Rays team where if they get wiped up by the Blue Jays again, are now not only in the third spot, but they're going to fall to the fourth. And now we're talking about a Tampa Bay Rays team that is like, oh my God, they are realistically, they are way out of the playoff picture. And that's not where you want to be, because the entire AL has completely tightened up in terms of this. This all could have been circumvented by making some sort of trade instead of just saying, yeah, let's take cash for Brett Phillips, and getting some level of consistency at the plate so you can start winning games and you can start making these things happen. And they just sitting idle on your hands yesterday, that didn't do anything. How do you feel about nothing happening and the Rays likely very, very quickly, Evan, can fall to like 8th in the playoff hunt in the AL?
And good morning, everybody. I'm sorry for my lateness. Of course, life hands us cards that we have to play in the morning. Danny, I expected the expected. If that makes any sense whatsoever.
100%.
The usual splashes or any kind of usual moves that that the Rays are not come to known by, especially when it comes to making big trades. It wasn't going to happen. I knew something wasn't going to happen.
Right.
Because everybody you have to realize, and I know people thought they were in on Wilson Contreras in Chicago about, hey, one of our needs is a catcher. That's one of the needs that we have to have, because Zunino's out, he's out too, and now we've got Patino who's really just filling in for everybody, and then we have two guys in the minors that are helping out. That was a need that we had, maybe a starting pitcher and maybe bringing in another bat, but you have to realize, Rays fans, the financial constraints of this team, and also the coveting of top prospects. This team will not make those types of moves. And it's too bad too. It is too bad too. And I think the biggest thing is, Danny, it's the financial constraints, because they can't cover some of these contracts that these big name players have. You know what I mean? So, and that's the biggest thing. Like, look, Juan Soto was one of the names, but realistically, were we going to get him? Probably not, because we couldn't cover the rest of his contract. And, look, the Padres are either one or two with us when it comes to the top farm system in the leagues. No doubt about it. They are all in. They pretty much gave up their entire future just to go all in on this year for a World Series title. And that's something that I wish the Rays maybe would do once in a lifetime, but they just covet guys way too much to do that. And, and I also tweeted out yesterday, look, they're not going to make the playoffs. And I said this on Monday, look, with the schedule that they have coming up in September, good luck. Good. It is. Yes, it is a brutal it's almost like going through a maze of just epic proportions to get to the finish line. And, I know we've got Harold Ramirez coming back. We've got Wander Franco coming back. We've got all these reinforcements, but is it going to be enough? And that's what I look at.
Late.
Yeah. Is it too little too late? Yeah, exactly. And I know. I'm sure that Eric Neander and the top brass are going to be interviewed by, DAE and other sports channels about, hey, why didn't you guys make any more moves? And I know I know the answers. I just know what they're going to say. Well, we think that the team that we have already on the field is the field that the team that we want going forward.
Best team we can field.
The best team that we could field. Sorry, thank you, Danny, for putting those words in my mouth. Like, this is the best team that we could field at the moment, and this is the amount of moves that we made. That's what they're gonna say. That's their honest, and I put that in quotations, honest PR move type answer that they always say. They always say that answer after the deadline's done, and they make maybe minimal moves when it comes to bettering the team, especially which is so. I would think it's a gut punch to fans, because with the amount of players that they have on the IL, you would think they would try and just beef it up a little bit more. You know what I mean? So, look, we've been saying this all season long, that if they don't make the playoffs, don't cry to us, because we've been saying it. So
the Rays now have a 34.2% chance of making the playoffs.
That's not good.
No, look, do you remember what it was like 2 weeks ago? I want to say where I was like, look, I expect the Rays.
Wasn't it?
It was at 70.
Yes, it was at 70. That's right.
When I would say if the Rays get down to about a 45% chance, don't panic. I expected it to be around 45% at the lowest point. Now we're talking about 34%. Like it's very dangerous territory for this team. And that's realistically, that's where it is. And how bad does it piss you off that they didn't even try to get Juan Soto?
It doesn't piss me off. You know why? Because I knew they weren't going to.
But seeing what the Padres offered and knowing that we have these coveted prospects that we always talk about don't always really seem to pan out, at least when they're on this team.
I know. They got Soto and they got Josh Bell, who Josh Bell is having a very underrated seat. Like nobody's talking about Josh Bell, and Josh Bell's batting 300. He's got 14 dingers.
Yep.
Like that's somebody you could use on your team. I mean, it's frustrating, but it's business as usual for the Rays. It's not how they do things. And for the expectations this year of, hey, we're gonna go back to the World Series. Like you're not even in the wild card spots anymore, man.
You're not. Yeah, the Rays are realistically. You hit the nail on the head. The Rays are not going to make the playoffs.
It's
too hard.
You know, it's funny, Danny. Yesterday that we all thought kind of like the Red Sox would be sellers, which they were sellers and buyers at the same time, which was totally weird. And the Orioles, I was surprised that the Orioles made the moves that they did because they're still kind of in the hunt too. You trade away Trey Mancini and you got some stuff back for, but New York did what New York was going to do, was just go all into as well. And then Toronto made a couple moves. They didn't make as many moves as I thought they're going to make, but other teams in the AL did. The Twins did, the Guardians did. Like all these teams that are a couple of games, back in the wild card race are beefing up their team to make that push this month and then into next month. And what did the Rays do? I mean, you get David Peralta and you get Siri from Houston. So and Siri is a
Cash for Brett Phillips because Cash is going to help you with consistency at the plate. Of course, if I'm throwing up stacks of cash at the plate,
you're going to
get
home runs off of a $50 bill.
Come on, man. Like that's the crazy part is because we're looking right now, like you said, there's an absolute gauntlet less than 30 days away for this Tampa Bay Rays team, who is only one game above Cleveland, a game and a half above the Orioles, and 2 games above both Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox, from falling all the way to 7th in the wild card. You're talking about here we go again. We were in the World Series 2 years ago. We had 100 wins last season. We're going to finish 7th in the AL. Yeah, but we were injured.
And also, Danny, the way it's trending right now, like, the Red Sox were a couple of games below 500 a couple of days ago. Now they're above 5. Like, looking at the standings in the AL East, you have the Blue Jays are 4 games up on us, and then the Rays, Orioles, and Red Sox are separated by a game and a half. Yep. That's it.
Yep.
So if you think it's going to be crazy going down the stretch, you're definitely right, because all of September we play AL East teams, and we play teams that are like in the playoffs pretty much or in the hunt for the playoffs.
Yep.
And look, your expectations maybe should be a little bit lowered going into September because they're not going to be good. And look, you can call us, negative Nancy's all you want to, but we're being realistic here. We're being realistic about the outcome of this team is what's going to have in 2022. And you can say, oh, well, Evan, they've got injuries galore and, this happened. Well, if they have injuries galore, they should have a top farm system that's going to be able to send up guys that are going to fill in like the next guy up.
But we do, right?
Yeah. I mean, you look at NFL teams, the next guy up is filling in, and the next guy up is usually compatible, if not maybe even better than the guy that they're filling in right now.
Yep.
So
I think the only sport where the next man up is not always prevalent is basketball.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter who's plays behind Kevin Durant. Not nearly as good. It doesn't even matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know what does matter? And I had to wait for this because I moved this to the end of our show. The Miami Dolphins get caught tampering.
Idiots.
And the hammer gets thrown down upon the Miami Dolphins. They lose. Did you see everything that they lost? A first round 2023 draft pick.
I did see that.
A third rounder in 2024. Stephen Ross gets fined $1.5 million, suspended through October the 17th.
Which for him, that amount of money is, hey, I can eat that and maybe like give it to charity or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a business.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that up. Yeah. I don't, and Roger Goodell, I think Roger Goodell, his statement was probably like the best statement that you could make based upon that. Basically he just said, like, I know of no prior instance in which ownership was so directly involved in the violations. And he's correct. We've never seen an instance where that has happened. Like, how good do you feel if you're Brian Flores right now, where he was kind of a laughing stock, where he was like, where people are going, oh, he's making up all this stuff. It's not correct. And now he's sitting there going,
I told you so. Yeah, I told you so. Rappaport did say he was on the NFL network yesterday. He's like, and it was kind of funny. He kind of went, you know how he does his usual shtick when he's having interviews? He kind of went, he took that mask off and became a human for a second, where he goes, this is the most blatant, like, tampering I've ever seen in my life. The most blatant tampering. And he was like, and that's totally true. I mean, what the Dolphins did was, it was almost like that little kid that pokes, like, kind of peers its head, gets in trouble, or kind of gets in trouble, then like goes away and then comes back again like a couple of years later and pokes again. Like, that's what it was. Like, you guys know you're in the wrong, but you keep doing it. And you think,
and not only with the Bucks, you did it with the Patriots as well.
Too. I didn't know it went far back as the Patriots.
I didn't know that either.
I did not know that either. I thought I was just with the Bucks, after the season where he was retiring and he made a move. I did not know it went back almost 3 years when he was with New England. And that was the year, like, he was like figuring out, hey, if I'm going to leave or not. Dude, that's insane. It's insane.
I never thought that I would see something like that. And I think that is probably why Sean Payton also retired as well.
Yeah, because he didn't want anything to do with that shit. Hell no.
Now, I know that people are asking, like, of course, the haters of Tom Brady are saying, well, how come he's not getting any punishment? He should be getting punished, because that doesn't fall under the personal conduct policy. That's why.
Also, too, like, it's how you can't really punish him because they came to him.
Right.
Like, they
and
came
even
to
if he went to them, like, that's not tampering. That's saying, hey, I'm coming up for free agency. What you got for me?
Yeah, exactly. And happy birthday to Tom Brady, by the way.
45
years old and slinging it like he's 25.
Jeez.
Yeah, for all of you, like, saying this is going to taint his legacy, that doesn't taint anything. He didn't do anything. They came to him about what he's going to do in the offseason, and came to him about a minority stake in the company and possibly maybe playing for him. That's for all you knuckleheads on Twitter. Oh, he's got a tainted legacy. No, he does not. Shut up. Like,
the Deflategate has more of a taint to his legacy than the Miami Dolphins going, hey, we'll give you some equity.
Hey, buddy. Hey, I know you got a house down here, buddy. Would you like to come play for us, buddy? Or be an owner, buddy?
Yeah.
We got to figure out how you can get the whistle after the S's. Like,
it's
so hard.
Don't forget your poops and peas.
That's the best I can do.
Ooh, get you.
I mean, like, so of course, and we talked about this. We talked about this yesterday. This is way more severe than what Deshaun Watson got. But here's the thing: is Deshaun Watson's situation was not an NFL violation. That had to do with stuff outside of the private company of the NFL.
We're still waiting on if the NFL is appealing this to get more games off of this, more games, right?
Right. So, I mean, the NFL could appeal it. And then here's the thing is, for all of the people right now that are going, I can't believe he's going to get 6 games and the Dolphins get this for just trying to acquire a player. But this is a direct violation of an NFL rule. There's no NFL rules saying,
I mean, there should be.
Right. But there shouldn't have to be at the same time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's where the difference is the NFL can't punish Deshaun Watson like they're scolding him as a parent. They have to follow the rules that they have set in place. And up until now, I mean, I guess you could have argued about the Robert Kraft situation because that was kind of the same thing when he was down here getting rubbing tugs in Florida.
Consensually. Consensually.
I mean, but like I said, for me, when it's apples to oranges.
It's so funny too how punishments are handed out in the NFL, which we look at these like the Calvin Ridley thing, and then going back to like Josh Gordon with weed and Martavius. I totally forgot about Martavius Bryant from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who got in trouble a lot with weed again. It's like,
you're right.
Shouldn't the NFL go back almost like how some trials are looked at and say, hey, maybe we made the wrong decision about these punishments. I mean, maybe the NFL should maybe go back and look at these rulings and punishments and goes, you know what? The punishment does not fit the crime, especially with the guys that have, the weed and the substances abuse is maybe other punishment than that. But when they're getting suspended for being tested positive for weed, you maybe shouldn't suspend them, because now weed is so legalized in almost all of 50 states where it's medicinal purposes. You should look at these. And, with the lingering of look, I think people are almost forgetting that Alvin Kamara's punishment is going to be handed down sooner rather than later too, because he does have a court date coming up. So
the way the NFL works, Evan, I feel like they're going to announce Alvin Kamara today and just have 3 straight days of like, how are you coming up with these situations?
Danny, I love the NFL offseason because there's so much drama, because the NFL is year round. Let's put that right there. The NFL is year round. No matter if it's nothing's going on with the NFL, there's always something going on with the NFL. And I love it when it gets closer to the season, because then you start having all the drama really ramping up, especially with punishments being handed down, or even stories that we didn't even know about come about. They're like, oh, well, this happened like last year. We're just going to bring it up this year now before the season starts. That's why I love the NFL so much. But yeah, look, when it directly involves inside of the bubble, let's say the NFL bubble, that's when punishments like this will be handed down. When it happens outside the bubble, but obviously it's kind of like a weird situation with that Deshaun Watson deal, because they were saying Houston kind of enabled this behavior and all that. So it could be directly NFL involved too, as well. If Houston was kind of directly involved with setting up 66 masseurs or massage therapists for Deshaun Watson to, whatever he did. Look, whatever happened behind closed doors, and obviously it's a terrible situation, because just one of these just is a domino effect on this. And it's just we're a show that we don't really talk about these types of things because we're a fun show.
Yep.
But I think with the punishment he has at 6, I think it's going to stay at 6. And you got to remember too, he didn't get fined anything. He keeps all that $43.5 million, and the only thing he really paid out was probably maybe under $500,000 for the people that he settled with. So he's still keeping all that money, which is mind-boggling when it comes.
Let me ask you this, and you can feel free to plead the fifth on this.
I will. Sure.
But the reason we know that he paid less than $1 million, less than $500,000 to settle all of these cases.
Right.
I feel like that kind of spells that they might not all have been accurate. Does that make sense? Because
well, it also puts in the question too is, if you're paying everybody off, are you lazy because you don't want to go to the court because you just don't want to deal with all this stuff? You just want it to go away. That way you can resume your career, or are you guilty? You know what I mean?
Right. And I'm not saying that he's either or. I'm just saying the optics of the situation.
Right.
Is what do you value? Let's say you were sexually assaulted. What do you value that at? If you're paying less than $500,000 to 20 plus people, divide that up. That's not a lot of money that you're receiving for being violated and assaulted. And that's, to me, I just look at the sheer optics of it. regardless. Like,
Yeah,
all
and I
one,
totally get
Okay.
that. I totally get that because I was looking at it too, and I also looked at the arbitrator's statement about his behavior and all that, and it's the whole thing is kind of just it's confusing, and it's also like, okay, well, what's real, what's not real? Because if you're saying he had predatory behavior, then why is he only getting 6 games? Why are you recommending only 6 games and no fine and all that? Why aren't you
right?
recommending like a full year? You know what I mean?
It's just it's entirely odd scenario.
Right.
And look, even one of them to
What?
me is uncalled for and is disgusting, and it's something that's to me is kind of unforgivable. You can't sexually assault somebody in my eyes and be like, I didn't mean to.
Look, if you're gonna go, if you want to do that, if you want to get a rub and tug, just go to a rub and tug place. Don't like hire somebody that's not known.
Yeah,
for
don't go to
doing
a
that.
fancy location.
Yeah, just go like we have down here in Bradenton, Florida. We have the Japan sauna. Just go to Japan sauna, and they will do that for you.
Where are you going today after the show, Evan?
I am not. No, I'm working. I am married, and I get massages from my wife. Damn.
Hey, we're gonna end the show happily, apparently. But yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, for me, I tweeted this out yesterday. The NFL sure has like the NFL PR team is terrible.
If I was the NFL PR team, I'm sure they're all their stress levels are through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
They all probably smoke medical marijuana, or they take Xanax, or
are they getting suspended?
Probably not. And then also too, I'm sure that most of them, they look like they're in their 20s, but they've stressed so much they look like they're in their 40s. Like that's their PR team because they stress out so much.
But like you can't wait a day to announce, like you couldn't wait until Thursday or Wednesday to say, hey, we're gonna punish the hell out of the Miami Dolphins a day after you announced arguably like the least severe sentence you could have given to Deshaun Watson. You couldn't have waited at 24 hours to announce that. Like that to me, I'm looking at it and going, damn, man, the NFL really
they have no chill.
They don't. And you should have waited 24 hours because the sentencing, and I'm going to say the sentencing that the Dolphins got is enormous.
Right.
Arguably, what happened with Deshaun Watson is not enough. And people were already up in arms about that. And then you come out and you give this crazy, crazy punishment to the Miami Dolphins. And you're like, yeah, people were pissed that you didn't really do much for Deshaun Watson. And then you drop this on the Dolphins and people are going, yeah, you see, tampering means more than assault. And you're like, should have waited.
Yeah, they should have waited to at least like next week.
Yeah, like
or at least Friday. Friday would have been fine.
Because let's be honest, Evan. The only thing that is affecting the Miami Dolphins currently is the suspension of Stephen Ross. And what the hell is an owner during training camp really doing?
Nothing. And I'm sure Mike McDaniel's like, God damn it.
Mike McDaniel's like, dude,
really? I should have stayed in San Fran.
Right? Dang. Poor guy. But it's just like you guys, you should have waited. That's why I said Alvin Kamara is going to be announced today. I can already, I can.
I would, you know what, Danny? It wouldn't surprise me if that came down today.
Or something is going to be announced today, and it's going to be a more severe penalty than what Deshaun Watson got. And people are going to compare Deshaun Watson to the Dolphins to whatever is going to be announced today. And we're going to have to sit back and I'm not even going to post popcorn emojis.
I know we're running over, but I wanted to ask you before we head out. Since Watson got 6 games, obviously he wasn't convicted in a court of law twice.
Right.
And now, I mean, obviously the court of public opinion is he did that shit. He did something.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kamara's punishment has to be more severe because there is evidence. There's video evidence of this.
Right.
Obviously, he hasn't gotten convicted yet. He's still in the legal process. If Kamara's punishment in the NFL is not as more severe than Deshaun Watson's, like let's just say hypothetically, NFL goes 8 games. it'll be a shit show.
Right.
You know what I mean? Kamara's suspension has to be a full year. It has to be.
I think he's only going to get 6 games.
You think only 6?
Yep.
I think
it's got to line up. And honestly,
I think 12. I think 12. I think they'll double it because of the evidence. Because there's actual video. Sure. It's like the Ray Rice. Even though Ray Rice got 2 games when that happened.
Yeah, but then he got blackballed.
Right. I think that might happen. I think that might happen to Kamara. Kamara will probably get 12 games, and then he'll be done. Like you won't see him in the NFL because the Saints will have to do. They'll have to say, "We got to cut you, bro." I mean, there's and plus if he gets convicted too as well, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
I mean, I guess it depends on what the conduct policy reads.
Right. And I think it also depends on too what if he gets convicted, like what his sentencing is when in the actual legal process is. If he gets like convicted of domestic violence or assault or whatever, and he gets put in jail, he's done, man. Yeah,
I mean, because there are different layers to it.
Right.
And to me, it's just weird that this case hasn't gone to trial yet.
I mean, it happened last year. Like this, I think around this time it happened right after the Pro Bowl. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really surprised it's taken this long to get even.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about 7 months now. Like that's just weird to me.
He's at camp.
Right. I mean, he's practicing, he's living life normally,
mm-hmm.
And that's, let me ask you this before we wrap up. If it was just Alvin Kamara that beat the hell out of this guy, instead of Alvin Kamara and all his friends beating the hell out of this guy, do you think the punishment and the severity is different? Do you think it just gets chalked up to a fight?
So a solo duel instead of like a beatdown.
Solo duel instead of.
That's a good question. I don't know. That's a good debatable question. Like if it's a solo beatdown more severe than a beatdown.
I mean, for the guy that got beat down, I would say,
obviously for the guy.
It's easier for you to go, 6 guys kicked my ass versus, Alvin Kamara.
I think it should be. If he's involved with a beatdown with a bunch of people, it's how many hits did he get in?
I don't think
how many hits did Kamara get in?
Oh, Kamara. You know what? I don't even know if I don't even remember on the video if Alvin Kamara even got anything on him.
Well, even if he's involved, I mean, it's going to be bad. You know what
I mean? Ray Lewis was involved in murder.
True, and he got off. That's true too. And the funny thing is, Plaxico Burress shoots his own self, and he gets thrown in jail.
Right. I mean, that's because he had an unregistered gun, though.
He shot himself.
He cheddar bobbed himself.
Yes, he cheddar bobbed himself. Yes.
Good Lord. As I opened up the show, our DeAndre Lou is at training camp currently as we speak. At One Buccaneer Place. So make sure you follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm getting all these Instagram notifications, so she's clearly posting some videos and stuff for us, and we'll be partaking in the press conference afterwards. So make sure you look us up on all the social media networks. Search for the Channelside Sports Network. Give us a like and a follow. Hopefully you enjoyed the show today and you enjoyed the content that we talked about. And we didn't get too blah towards the end, but look, you have to talk about these topics, right? These are your polarizing. These are your headlines when it comes to NFL. If you do a Google search for the NFL, you're not going to find that Leonard Fournette is the highest ranked Buccaneer in fantasy. You're going to find Deshaun Watson, Stephen Ross, tampering, and Tom Brady. Those are going to be your headlines. We got to talk about them. And that's what we do.
That's the story. We're sticking to it.
Damn right, like Dr. Pepper, baby. That is going to wrap it up for us on this Wednesday edition of Channelside in the Morning, live from the Channelside Sports Network. I am Danny. That is Evan. We are going to do it all over again tomorrow.